mean, I think just rock and roll should be dangerous.
Yeah, I agree.
Everything should be questioned.
People say, can rock and roll change things? Well, I think it can. If it changes your mindset for 1 second or makes you question anything, then yes, I think so.
Welcome to paradise.
From snotty school kids to the undisputed multi-platinum selling worldwide masters of punk pop, the story of the Green Day phenomenon is the journey of a hard-working East Bay band dedicated to their craft, creating chaos and wading through endless tubs of hair dye along the way.
There's so many bands that make it and have long careers that I think are bad, that to explain why one that I think is good made it, I really don't have an explanation for.
I think the reason why they're so successful is because they're so damn serious about their business.
From day one, they are a very good pop punk band who write really brilliant, catchy songs. That's what Green Day are on this planet for.
And it was Green Day who really were the first band to kind of go so huge that they opened the floodgates for a lot of other bands.
And the kind of success they got was bigger than they could ever imagine.
He's the guy you could imagine having a drink with, but also he's a rock god, he's a punk rock star, he really is.
It's a very simple form to copy, but it's a very difficult one to do really, really well.
Just working class kids, essentially, who, basically took over the world.
This is the colorful story of Green Day. It all started way back in '87 in the stifling, bleak refinery town of Rodeo, California. 15 miles north of Berkeley, when two 11-year-old friends, Billie Joe Armstrong and Mike Pritchard, met one day in the school canteen. Billie was the youngest of 6 children, his mother a waitress in a local diner, while Mike had been born to a heroin-addicted mother and adopted at a young age. Finding they shared a similar sense of humor and an interest in music, the pair became inseparable, spending endless hours listening to records borrowed from Billie's older siblings. Soon they began jamming together, Billie Joe on a guitar bought for him by his father, and Mike, now going by the name of Mike Dirnt, on bass. The two friends had been playing their songs at home for a couple of years, when in 1987, they decided to recruit a drummer for their garage band. His name was John Kiffmeyer, but everyone knew him as Al Sobrante. Together, the 3 teens became Sweet Children, a tongue-in-cheek moniker lifted from their song of the same name.
They call themselves the Sweet Children because people would patronize them and call them Sweet Children.
Maybe it was like to preempt any criticism they would get at shows, because young bands get given quite a hard time. Older punks will be thinking, who are these young upstarts? So it's probably tongue-in-cheek, sarcastic choice of name, really. I played the first show at a place called Rod's Hickory Pit, which was like a diner in Rodeo, where they grew up, and Billie Joe's mother was actually a waitress there. There was like a little side room off from the main diner where they played in front of sort of 30 of their school friends, and I imagine a few curious sort of diners sitting, eating their burgers and fries, wondering what the racket was next door.
They were school kids, they really played for their friends and for the hell of it, but all reports that I can certainly discover regarding those gigs is that they were already very good at that time. They already had something about them, they had some kind of sense of stuff, but they really played wherever anyone would have them.
In the earliest days of Sweet Children, the trio began hanging around the recently opened all-ages punk rock venue, 924 Gilman Street in the East Bay, making new friends and watching local bands like cult favorites Operation Ivy, whose songs Green Day still cover today, and who went on to form Rancid. The Gilman scene was a place where young punk fans could hang out and form bands, start record labels, or fanzines. a close-knit community that prided itself on its punk ethics.
There was a lot of localism at the time where a lot of people felt like there was all this local talent that didn't have any place to play. And by having this place suddenly that people were able to create, a lot of people came out of the woodwork, a lot of people that had been around were able to focus on that. And it had, and still has, a kind of unifying effect.
In November 1988, Sweet Children made the leap from audience to stage when they began performing at Gilman regularly.
It's quite hard for a young band to get shows, particularly in America, more so than in the UK because of the licensing laws. You know, a lot of places you've got to be 21 and they're really strict on ID. But sort of the benefit for Green Day was that they were part of the punk scene and they were associated with Gilman Street, which had a sort of no alcohol policy, so the licensing laws were different, so they were able to get quite a few shows early on.
Gilman Street was great because there's a sense of community. There wasn't like you'd be based over in England and there'd be no community at all. There was a strong punk rock community because it's a very ethical punk rock club. There's a real sense of identity to it and there's a very sense of lifestyle to it. It must have been fantastic. I mean, it's still going, Gilman Street. It's a really cool venue. So Sweet Children is what, as they were known at the time. That's what they would play there all the time as like a little mini house band.
I played Reading, I played Woodstock, I've played to massive crowds all over the world, but that place to me will always be the biggest place to play in the world.
It's a punk venue and they've got very strict rules in terms of the bands that they'll let play there. They don't like people who are signed to major labels to play there. It's for upcoming bands.
It's like this dingy, hole-in-the-wall place, but it has this vibe. It's so rock, you know, and it's easy to see how, you know, why so many bands love to play there, because not only is it legendary, but there's something about the place itself. You know, it just has that vibe, and that venue in particular is a breeding ground, no question.
The shows were so popular that they caught the attention of local punk label Lookout, started by Lawrence Livermore, sometime writer and frontman with local band The Lookouts. Livermore agreed to finance the high schoolers' earliest recordings. The 1,000-hour single, recorded cheaply and quickly and released in 1989. Soon the band were recording their full-length debut album, 39 Smooth, over one weekend in San Francisco.
They worked quickly and it kind of, you can tell, and it wasn't done at a budget, it was done for a few $100s. But taking that into account, it's still a pretty strong album, really.
It seems to be full of songs about girls. I think there's like only two other tracks on there that don't talk about some kind of angst relationship with girls.
You can't expect 15, 16, 17-year-olds to write these great, you know, 3 verses on deconstructing the political situation in America. I mean, it is about spots, boys and girls and fart jokes. I mean, that's basically where you're at when you're 15 or 16, and Green Day were kind of mirroring that very well.
The musicianship is quite poor. The drumming is all over the place, but then again, I suppose it's punk music, and in fact, it's probably the most punky that they ever sound.
I think you'd have to be an idiot to listen to that album and not to see the kind of instinctive understanding that Billie Joe Armstrong, as a principal songwriter, has of the mechanics of writing a song.
Billie Joe's songwriting was already of a pretty high standard, and they kind of hit upon their own sound, which was something fast, stripped down, melodic, but with lots of harmonies and pop melodies.
My girlfriend left me on the phone. I pathetically left here alone. I can't call this sane.
Billie Joe actually left high school just a few months before he was due to graduate. Mike actually sort of stayed on and graduated, but in the last few months of school, Billie Joe was actually concentrating on booking Green Day's first American tour.
By the end of that year, I think they'd played in something like 48 of the 50 states, but they'd played everywhere. And so instead of thinking, well, this is our little band and we do it for fun, as soon as the debut album was recorded, they said, okay, well, let's try and see if we can take this a little bit further. And didn't look for handouts, didn't look for help, just slept on people's floors, played to, 50 people a night, and went on tour.
Now officially signed to Lookout, Sweet Children changed their name to Green Day, a reference from kids' TV show Sesame Street, which they adopted to mean a day spent smoking marijuana. All was going well until John decided to give up the pursuit of punk stardom in favor of a college education. This would turn out to be the crucial turning point in Green Day's career, when they hooked up with fellow Gilman graduate Frank Edwin Wright III, better known as Tre Cool, a precocious and hyperactive drummer with local band The Lookouts. Though Tre came from the remote mountain town of Willits, by his mid-teens, he was already a fixture on the Berkeley punk scene with a reputation as a promising drummer and a nose for mischief. He was the perfect candidate to fill the vacant Green Day drum stool.
Both Billie Joe and Mike sort of shared a similar sense of humour growing up, which is how they became friends at school. When Tre came into the band, he was kind of even more extreme, more prone to pulling pranks. There's some story about when they were first toured, they were staying in a house and they woke up in the morning and there was no milk for their coffee, so Tre milked a dog, basically, put it in the coffee. So that's what he brought to the band. He would do the things which the others kind of didn't do.
Tre Cool is, pound for pound, one of the best drummers in modern music, in the sense that he brings a tightness and a sense of rhythm and roll, if you will, a sense of bounce and energy to Green Day's music that, while they weren't entirely lacking that before, it really brought the playing to a kind of whole new level, that real knuckle tightness. When Tre Cool joined the band, Green Day in many ways became complete. There is a sense of unity, a sense of trust, a sense of closeness, a sense of energy, a sense of shared understanding. And I think that the band became the band when Tre Cool joined them.
So in 1991, with Tre on board, they recorded their second album, Kerplunk, their first as the Green Day lineup we know today. The album showcased Billy Joel's talent for writing songs that combine the melodies of British bands of the 60s with the energy of 70s punk rock and 80s hardcore.
Kerplunk is it's actually a good record, really. I mean, the band have learned to play their instruments, and Tre Cool comes along, and I think he just totally tightens up the rhythm section. Basically, the band seem as though they've travelled, they've done the gigging circuit. As a result, the album Kerplunk just sounds far more together.
There is a definite sense of musical progression in terms of the ability to write songs. The obvious example would be Welcome to Paradise, which is a song that then subsequently made it onto Dookie, the next album.
The early music was more straight ahead, a little bit more punk rock, a little more up-tempo, faster stuff. But it's easy to see the transition. They started going a little more melodic, and they concentrated on songwriting, and I think that was the smart thing to do, because if they just stayed punk rock, they could have ended up being a niche band, as opposed to the monster that they become.
It cemented their reputation as being ones to keep an eye on. And people around them and who got to see them were becoming very, very excited.
Do you have the time?
With proper digs in the basement at 2243 Ashby Street, the guys were now living, eating, and breathing as one band. The band had little in the way of money and did the odd menial job to get by between playing increasingly bigger tours. They bought and revamped a former bookmobile van with the help of driver and super roadie Tre's dad, who took the wheel as they headed out to introduce their punchy style to the rest of sleeping America. It was live that Green Day built their reputation, playing everywhere and anyway, including in 1991, a hectic European tour that saw the band playing everywhere from squats to snooker halls.
To give you some idea of what the tour was like, Billie Joe Armstrong contracted lice from this tour. The conditions were so, let's be kind, let's say they were rustic. The conditions were rustic.
They played something like 60, 65 shows in 3 months, which is quite a tough schedule. They were used to it though, because they were living sort of, again, hand to mouth. But this time it was in a whole different culture.
They weren't really paid for the shows. They toured around in vans. They didn't bring equipment over. They brought albums to sell. They brought a screen so they could print T-shirts as and when needed to be, and that's how they made their money.
You know, coming into a British winter when you're used to the California sunshine is going to be pretty jarring. They played squats in Denmark, in Germany. They went to Spain. They just roughed it, basically. They didn't get a lot of publicity out of it. But what they did in 1991 by touring Europe was just sort of start lots of little fires, if you like, across Europe, which when they came back, you know, were sort of burning brighter, if you like.
Soon, on word of mouth alone, 39 Smooth and Kerplunk had notched up sales of 50,000 copies each, and it was clear they needed some help taking care of their business affairs.
Green Day had come from a place in the underground where they had managed to sell 50,000 records in the States without virtually any publicity, virtually word of mouth. The label, as we found out when we got on Lookout, hardly sent out any promo copies. They didn't put ads in zines or magazines back then. So Green Day had pretty much done it on their own, by themselves, just from touring and, you know, going back out on the road and continuing to produce albums and singles.
I think they knew how good they were. I mean, they've always been fairly confident bands, but I think they were sat down when they were writing these songs thinking, well, why not? We could have hits with these. Lookout can't do it. There was nothing down on Lookout. I mean, Lookout was a good, big underground label, but to get right to mainstream these days, it's not the 1970s anymore. This is the 90s. You had to deal with the monster to get into the mainstream.
They chose two attorneys, Elliot Kahn and Jeff Saltzman, who had previously represented bands such as Mudhoney, Primus, and the Melvins. They got to work touting the band's latest demo to all the major record labels. The band quickly found themselves the subject of a bidding war that ended when they decided to sign with Reprise Records A&R man and producer Robb Cavallo. Signing to a major label created division in the punk scene that had spawned Green Day. Some critics claiming the band had sold out and could never be credible again. Others recognized the new opportunities and financial backing available to a band who had always applied a pop sensibility to songwriting. So what difference did it make?
Robb Cavallo was a young guy who was quite newish, but he'd sort of made a name for himself. He was also a producer, so he was able to offer that service as well. But he turned up to see the band one day with a guitar. He took out his guitar, started jamming with them, smoked a bit of weed allegedly together, had a drive round Berkeley, had a chat, and realised that, you know, they shared the same sort of outlook for the future, really, and the same musical reference points.
They could have signed to Epitaph, who's becoming the biggest punk label of the lot at the time. But the way Billie Joe says it, why should I go from one independent label to another bigger independent label? That's an insult to Lookout. You know, if you're going to leave Lookout, go to the biggest label you possibly can, and that's what he did.
There was a letter in the punk militant punk Bible, I guess it is, Maximum Rock and Roll, by a fan who was so outraged that they'd signed to a major label that he'd actually began picketing their shows and trying to persuade people not to go in to watch this band and give their money to independent bands. There was a piece of graffiti on a wall in the Bay Area that said Billie Joe must die. But that's kind of a political viewpoint.
While the punk community argued amongst itself, in the summer of 1994, Billie Joe, Mike, and Tre got down to business and began recording their first big-budget album at Fantasy Studios in Berkeley. They wasted no time messing around. In just 19 days, they laid down 17 completed tracks for their major label debut. Only one song from their early repertoire, Welcome to Paradise, made it onto the record.
If you compare the single, what I thought of as a single for Kaplunk, Welcome to Paradise, you can actually compare those two mixes, and what Robb Cavallo does to it is what it's all about in taking a band up to that level where you're going to hawk them around the world. Yeah, a band needs to make that kind of record if they want to be large.
You know, on one level, Dookie is an album by a whinger, really. He's, you know, do you have the time to listen to me whine, and I'm bored in my room, and it's all about masturbation and kind of cheap nihilism, if you will. But there's something extremely knowing about it, as if he's kind of commenting with derision about himself, and it's all very, very, I think, clever and almost postmodern in that sense.
They have that kind of potty humour that's very big in America, but there's also a seriousness to the record as well. They're really good songs. Every single song on the record is like a little mini anthem of its own. I mean, they're really, really dead catchy songs.
Released in February of 1994, the record quietly marked the start of a phenomenal year when it entered the U.S. charts at 141. Yet in the space of 1 year, the band would go from playing frat parties, community halls, and punk clubs to closing the year performing at the 18,000 capacity Madison Square AIDS benefit concert. Some of it in the buff.
I think Green Day their timing was good. The whole Nirvana thing had sort of had its first peak. It had been 2.5 years since Nevermind came out when Dookie came out. I think they were like they stepped into that void where people are saying, what's next? What's coming along? And it was them.
The record company were probably, ecstatic because they'd found a band with this really sort of complete image, like I said, spiked, dyed hair. Wasn't really original, but it was kind of newish at the time. Suddenly, within the space of 3 or 4 months, their videos were on MTV all the time. The band were really visible because they were touring lots. The songs were on the radio, and they were being played on MTV all the time. And you can't underestimate the power of television.
MTV definitely, no question, played a part because that first video was so basic. But it so captured the essence of the band, especially at that time, just slightly irreverent and just real bare bones, and that's kind of it really presented the band well.
Well, MTV very rarely plays any guitar rock music, no matter what it says, and they picked up on Green Day. That helps a lot. Playing the festivals helped a lot. There's so many things went right from that year. Sometimes when you're in a band, everything goes right. It's not like most times it seems like everything goes wrong. But then that year, everything's like bang, 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 like a load of Skittles went down.
Thanks to heavy radio and MTV airplay, Green Day were becoming household names. A perfect Technicolor antidote to the fraught sounds of grunge that had dominated the early 90s. Their first taste of the mainstream limelight was playing the main stage at that year's Lollapalooza, Perry Farrell's traveling alternative rock festival. This gave them the major exposure the fans were crying out for. But it was their appearance at the 25th anniversary of Woodstock 2 that sealed their reputations as one of the most exciting and rabble-rousing new bands in American rock music.
It all keeps adding up. Our face covered right in hand. My chest paranoid. My
That guy with the green hair, he's a punk rocker. Look, he's even telling everybody. You fucking hippie.
I think the band before them was Peter Gabriel and his WOMAD collective, which was like, you know, all these world music artists. It was all good and well, but they were playing to a bunch of drunk, rowdy young Americans who were waiting for Green Day. The weather was pretty appalling. It had been raining, so when Green Day hit the stage, it kicked off basically. It was, you know, he was a band playing raw, aggressive music you could sing along to. Within minutes, the mud started flying basically. The band encouraged people to throw mud at them. The stage was covered in mud. Fights broke out between the band and security guards who were panicking.
I am not going to become a mud hippie. I don't care what you say.
People jumped on stage. Mike was tackled by a security guard who thought he was some kid from the crowd, and it just kicked off big style.
They were the talk of the festival. The Woodstock was a complete disaster, but the Green Day kind of encapsulated everything that was about that festival. You know, they took the piss out of it. It was all over the television. There was mud flying. There was like loads of really funny comments. So they became the band of the festival. Got loads of headlines off that. That bumped the sales of the record up.
Hey, everybody say shut the fuck up and we'll stop playing. Wait, 1, 2, 3. Okay, we're gone. Goodbye.
Green Day, spreading a little warmth and peace, brotherly love. We're at Woodstock 94.
All right, easy, guys.
The whole episode earned the band nothing but cred, and Dookie's sales shot up over the 1 million mark as new fans rushed to buy it, as well as the new Green Day single Basket Case, which became a hit the world over.
Just a really awesome opening intro, really very simple intro. But you couldn't help but just sort of think, well, what's going on here? And there's a really great intensity to how that song opens up.
Sometimes I give myself the creeps.
And when you get to know the song and it kicks into the guitars coming in, I mean, it's just, it's a real rush.
The video for Basket Case showed the band. Again, it was just them playing live, but it was in a mental asylum. They were kind of trussed up in straitjackets, bouncing off padded walls. And it was quite a simple approach. It was a simple song, a simple video, for simple people, I suppose you could say. You know, it wasn't rocket science. And the average sort of MTV viewer in America, you know, has a short attention span. Suddenly there's a band who are on stage with wide eyes, they're jumping about, flinging the guitars around, singing a song with a really strong chorus. It was just, you know, it was on radio, it was on MTV all the time for weeks.
By the close of 1994, Dookie had sold over 10 million copies, making Billie Joe, Mike, and Tre millionaires at the age of 22. Tired, dizzy, and dazed after 12 non-stop months, the new year ushered in feelings of introspection. Grappling with their newfound fame, the guys decided to look deeper into themselves for inspiration for the next album. With the success of their major label debut, the band were expected to deliver a follow-up as soon as humanly possible, which meant a lot of sleepless nights, assisted by the band's dabbling in the old punk's drug of choice, methamphetamine, more commonly known as speed. It was a combination of sleeplessness and anxiety at their newfound status as spokesmen of a generation that spawned many of the themes on the aptly titled Insomniac album.
I've been trying to sleep. I'm counting sheep by running out.
Insomniac was a darker record. It didn't have an obvious hit record on it, but it was just Green Day pulling back from the mainstream. Because I think a lot of bands of punk roots, they see the mainstream. They don't like the mainstream that much. They have songs they know will get into the mainstream. When they see what the mainstream's about, they want to pull back from it. You know, it's easy to say, you know, like, oh yeah, I deliberately didn't have a hit record. But let's not forget this record still sold 2 million copies. I mean, for a flop record, that's not bad going, is it? So it wasn't as instantly radio friendly, and it still had good songs on it, but there wasn't anything like Basket Case, which is like a wham bam, complete radio MTV smash. It didn't have stuff like that on the record. But you listen to it now, it is a really strong record.
That record held a lot of pent-up aggression, you know, and frustration and discontent.
We were always like just trying to get tough, as hard as we could play.
It just sort of came out bleak sounding.
They were trying to manage themselves at the time they made it. Billie Joe Armstrong was taking amphetamines and staying up all night and writing these kind of gnarled songs. Brain Stew certainly comes from that period, about, you know, strung out in his room. Geek Stink Breath is about someone whose breath smells because they've taken so much speed. Insomniac really is kind of, in my opinion, Green Day's standalone album. It works in context as a bridge between Dookie and Nimrod, but it also works as a snapshot of a band who have perhaps received more than they expected.
I walk a lonely road.
Insomniac may not have topped the commercial and critical success of Dookie, but then few albums ever have. It did, however, sell millions and spawn a clutch of singles that showed that Green Day were more than just a one-album flash in the pan. Songs such as J.A.R., which featured on the film Angus, and Brain Stew Jaded were firm radio favorites. Yet for some reason, Insomniac didn't quite hit the spot. It entered the U.S. album charts at number 2, which, along with a change in management, was enough to prompt certain critics to wonder whether Green Day had already peaked. It was speculation, not helped when the band canceled a European tour in spring '96 and immediately returned to California, citing an exhaustive, unrelenting schedule as the reason.
They consider themselves to be not particularly great live during that period. They were playing far too fast. They were worried about how many songs the audience knew that preceded Dookie. So they weren't playing a great many songs. They were messing around a lot in the set. They were kind of suffering panic attacks. Mike Dirnt was certainly suffering panic attacks. Billie Joe was suffering anxiety attacks. They were tired. They were attempting to manage themselves. And they'd never ever cancelled a tour before. They cancelled the European tour. They played the UK. They played the Brixton Academy. They hit the stage at 8:15 p.m. and were off by 9:30 p.m. because Billie Joe wanted to read a bedtime story to his child. So they were clearly not particularly happy not as a band necessarily, but as a live working unit. And they just kind of thought that cancelling a tour would be the worst thing in the world, and then they realised that perhaps they needed to do it.
Looking back on it now, it's probably a decision which possibly saved their career, because, you know, when a band has hit that level of success and the second album does well, it's often, you've seen it in other bands, that's when things often go wrong. Exhaustion kicks in, or the drink and drugs take precedence over the music. But Green Day did the right thing. I mean, at the time they disappointed lots of fans, but I'm sure anyone could see why they would do such a thing.
Green Day spent the rest of 1996 resting and writing new material. Though the canceled tour had disappointed fans, it may have been a move that saved the band's sanity. The result was a smart set of 18 songs called Nimrod that pushed the boundaries of punk pop and broadened the band's sound to fleetingly take in elements of ska, hardcore, and so much more besides. Mainly, though, it was the sound of Green Day firing on all cylinders. recording on their new record began in the summer of 1997, and the guys were in high spirits. Tre and Mike experimented with new instruments, and Billie Joe figured out a better way of laying down the vocals. Such new techniques served them well, and Nimrod suggested a band who still had plenty to say.
Nimrod I really like because it's still the 3-chord template, but they're doing a lot to make it a very interesting progressive record. It goes through different styles and ideas, but as with all good records, really, it's still got a through line. You know, it's still true to what they do, but it just holds your ear, and it's a successful record for doing that. Nimrod is the first chance they get to sort of take stock of things and actually decide what kind of record they want to make.
Well, here they've decided, like, well, why not be a pop band? Why not do the styles of music? You know, they still do it. They still do good pop punk songs on the album, but it wasn't so much they were tied into that kind of format. You know, people are accusing them of sellouts. You know, you get the sniping. We thought, well, stop that. Why should we bother? You know, why should we listen to what people are saying about us? We write good pop songs. We do good pop songs. If we do a punkier song, we do a punkier song. If we'll get an acoustic guitar and play a song, we'll do that. And that's eventually what created the big hit on the album.
Released in mid-October of 1997, Nimrod went down well with the fans, who bought 80,000 copies in the first week. Green Day felt positive about it too. Their decision to experiment with a different type of songwriting and instrumentation paid off. The introspective acoustic song Time of Your Life, Good Riddance, unveiled a change of pace for the first time and seemed to become the soundtrack to everyone's life at a moment of crisis.
Another turning point, a fork stuck in the road. Time grabs you by the wrist, directs you where to go. So make the best of this test and don't ask why. It's not a question.
I think it was great, man. I was so excited about that song.
Probably the most punk thing we could have done is put that on the record at that point.
I couldn't wait for that song to come out as a single. I just knew that the reaction was going to be really bizarre, but huge.
It was like everybody's prom song. It was everybody's graduation song. And that's like, you never expected to write somebody's prom song, you know? You never got invited to your prom.
Photographs and still frames in your mind.
It dominated the charts and struck a chord with people both sides of the ocean, taking on an anthemic life of its own when it was used on the final episode of Seinfeld, one of the most watched TV episodes of all times, and punctuated poignant moments in ER.
It's something unpredictable, but in the end it's right. I hope you have the time of your life.
Well, Good Riddance is a real departure for Green Day. It was just basically stripped down. It's just him and an acoustic guitar. And I mean, yes, he could have walked in and got the rest of the band to play on it, and they could have done it as more of a kick-ass song. But the way it's tender and it's more of an emotional song, and it's great. You know, it shows a nerve to go against what they've been typecast as doing. There is a tenderness, which has been there right from the start, but that song makes it far more obvious. It's a pretty naked, emotional song. Technically, you know, in one way it could be commercial suicide, but sometimes you take a massive risk. It's what can save your neck.
The band was on form. Nimrod was an artistic success, if not so much a commercial one. Though sales didn't really rival those of Dookie and Insomniac, it was an album that put them firmly back where they needed to be, basking in the glow of critical adulation and a firm, loyal fan base that guaranteed huge live crowds from America to Britain, Japan to Australia, and many more places besides. Their talents as great musicians were formally acknowledged later that year, when they picked up Best Live Performance at that year's Kerrang! Awards.
They're not the kind of band who boast, apart from when it comes to their live reputation. They really do believe that they can go up against they could go on any bill and blow any band off the stage.
Are we the best live band out there? Yes.
Don't wanna be an American idiot.
We pride ourselves definitely as being a live band. I don't. Kind of depends on what people are into, but we have a lot of energies on stage, and we love playing live. And I think that's one thing we've always been able to tell about us. And for us, it always starts as being a live band first, you know.
They're amazing live. I mean, they're extremely well rehearsed, very tight, very professional. of course, they got the songs. A lot of bands have had great songs, but they suck live. Green Day does not suck live.
They all have a lot of personality, and their individual personalities come out on stage. So they're kind of like cartoon characters in a way.
Billie Joe Armstrong, 1 minute he's like a little twitching energy ball of anger, the next minute he's asking about the crowd. My Dirnt is great. He's probably the most conventionally punk rock looking member of the band. He's still got the macho, almost Paul Simonon from The Clash, kind of low slung bass, swing around kind of moves. Tre Cool is a really good drummer. I think when he joined the band it made a real difference. It was like, it locked as a rhythm section, that was very important. And as a three-piece, the whole thing works as a perfect kind of dynamic.
They're bound to be good. They are good. They've been around the world. You know, no band can not be good. It doesn't matter how badly you start. You just by pure doing the same thing night after night, you will become good.
They'd gone to Europe where I think they were playing 4,000 or 5,000 seat places. And then they came back for the first arena show, 11,000 seat, and I asked Tre, I said, "Are you nervous?" And he said, "Fuck yeah." And then they went out and did exactly what they'd been doing all along.
They played squats in Germany right back at the beginning of their career, and they believe that they still bring an element of that sort of street fighting edge to their stadium shows.
We'll always have those insane shows. You know, I think we'll stop when our knees give out. You know, that's sort of what, you know, it's unpredictable and chaos, and kids just having a good time. I mean, we'd never want to lose sight of, because that's you know, such a huge part of Green Day.
Green Day were back to doing what they enjoyed best. In November 1997, their show at a Tower Records in New York turned into a full-scale riot after Billie Joe spray-painted "Fuck You" on the store's window and told the crowd, "You can do anything you want, because you're not at Tower Records, you're at a Green Day concert." After a 45-minute set, the band then destroyed their equipment and fans wrecked half the shop. As all went quiet on the Green Day front, few suspected that some of the first tunes to be written after the final Nimrod shows were steadily developing into a sound that was a departure from anything they had done before. An album that would firmly place Billie Joe Armstrong in the category of classic American songwriters such as Bob Dylan or Bruce Springsteen. That album was entitled Warning.
By the time the band came to record Warning, they'd had quite a bit of time off in the previous year. In 1999, they'd kind of been lying low for a while, being at home with the wives, their kids, so, you know, there's a few marriages and divorces along the way. But Warning was kind of really very much Billie Joe's album.
Billie Joe, I think, saw Warning as the album that would have brought Green Day to a natural ending, in as much as the band were trying to fulfill what they saw as their fans' desires. They were trying to basically go into the trap, trying to second guess what Green Day fans wanted. Tre and Mike weren't happy because they thought that Billie Joe was being too bossy. Basically, I think they'd been frozen out in terms of ideas. So Warning was a warning, if you like.
He was probably making a concerted effort not to write another straightforward punk pop record. He realised that to achieve longevity, they'd have to sort of diversify slightly. So Warning was really a kind of a snapshot of Billie Joe Armstrong's mindset at the time.
It was to be a departure from anything that had gone before. Their aim was to capture their true sound, a personal political statement of everything they stood for. So they started by recording the album in Studio 880 right at home in Oakland, California, late '99, and completed the album in the summer of 2000 in LA.
I own the studio here, Studio 880. Green Day, the first time they came in here, I've never met them, they never met us, and I was introduced to chaos. It was just insane. They were pure punks at best, a lot of practical jokes, you know, just, it was a mess, and had a lot of fun. They would amazingly get here before me, and I get here at 9 a.m. And at least Mike would, you know, because he couldn't wait to start the day. And I'd leave here at 6, and they'd probably be here well into the night, as long as ideas were flowing. You know, the fun in between was just to, you know, let's freshen up our minds. If Billy has to work late, and his wife will come by with his kids, and they'll have a quick dinner here. You know, but other than that, it's pretty much business and play, but their play is doing music. That's the funny thing, is they work so goddamn hard in the studio doing music to say, I need a break. Let's go jam in the other room. Guess they love it.
Whereas previous album Nimrod had been a collection of new ideas and song styles, it had still nevertheless been a punk pop record. Now with Warning, the band wanted to experiment further with their new album. Not happy with the new producer allocated to the task, Green Day wasted no time in getting rid of the guy and taking over the reins. Of course, their long-standing producer Robb was there to oversee. But the guys decided to make it their own album, with Billy particularly involved in the production process. With Warning, Green Day ditched their traditional punk pop trademark sound and pushed themselves to the hilt.
They had a mariachi band at one point that came into the studio, and, you know, horn players. They pull it in, but you'd be surprised how much they do on their own. You know, some of the different instruments, keyboards, you know, like I say, Tre playing the accordion and things like that. Unreal.
They were kind of following Billie Joe Armstrong's songwriting vision, but there was still time for a few pranks and stuff like that. So when they were, you know, one song in particular, Blood, Sex and Booze, for reasons unknown, they decided they wanted the sound of a whip cracking or well, they wanted to get a dominatrix into the studio, probably for the sheer hell of it.
Tre was online on the computer in the lounge, and he's always looking at just the weirdest things. And he was looking at dominatrix girls online and just kind of yucking it up. And I was just sitting on the couch, and my intern, who just got stepped up to assistant engineer, you know, real young green kid, kind of nervous. He walked in, and I said, "Hey Tre, you should hire one of those dominatrix to beat the hell out of my intern, you know, if he wants an album credit." And Tre goes, "Yeah." And he's like, "Yeah, dude, you're not going to get a credit unless you take a beating like a man." And our assistant, named Tone, he thought he was kidding. Next day, Mistress Simone, and she was scary. I mean, stilettos, tattoos, it's awesome. And it's just, oh my God. Tre was happy. Tone was freaked out. He wanted to run out of the building. He wanted to throw up. He wanted to cry like a little girl. He'll never admit to that. But that day, he got his ass kicked. And it's on the front of that song. And he came up, and it was the funniest thing. I said, "How was it?" "I don't know. In a weird way, it was kind of cool." We really harmed that guy.
Why don't there move for the pain she puts you through is what I need. So many
This mellow, hooky album also had all the hallmarks of their wider range of influences, and silenced critics who accused them of being nothing more than a radio-friendly, throwaway punk band. Influences such as the Beatles, Elvis Costello, The Replacements, and even old pop songs such as Downtown, which provided the blueprint for Hold On, were obvious.
It's a very melodic record, and if you listen, you can hear snippets or snatches or almost sort of rip-offs of songs which have gone before. And it worked in their favour, though. You could, there was a familiarity to their songs.
I really like Warning. I think it's really good. And Warning, you can definitely hear it. In some ways, I think it's a warm-up. It's American Idiot. I think that lyrically, it's not a political record, but there's a few more topics getting mixed in there. And instrumentally, it's quite interesting. Well, acoustic guitars are in there. It's not all. It's not wimpy. It's fast and it's exciting.
When Green Day recorded Warning, they did it pretty much how all the other bands do it. They book a certain amount of time, and they're under time constraints to get a record done. And how do you let yourself go artistically if you're under time constraints, especially when you have that much talent?
Today's a Macy's Day Parade. The night of the living dead is on its way, with a credit report for duty call.
Catchy, reflective, and rather like folk music in parts, it seemed to some that Green Day had gone off the boil with this new direction. Compared to the dizzy platinum heights of their first 4 albums, Warning has only ever made gold, though it remains an album loved by many fans and the record that bridged the gap from the snotty punks of old to the maturing statesmen we know and love today. Now was the time, the record bosses thought, to put out a compilation or two.
In the absence of a new studio album, the record label put out not one but 2 compilation albums, International Super Hits, which was a collection of the greatest hits. And they also put out Shenanigans, which was a compilation of B-sides and sort of unreleased tracks.
In the summer 2002, Green Day toured the UK, and that record was simply put out there, simply to have something to sell for the tour. International Super Hits is another thing entirely. There was a song on it called Maria, which was a new song, which was a pretty decent song. But in that sense, it's a one-song album because everybody already owned the other songs. It's filler.
In some ways, maybe mentally, it's just a way of like saying, right, that phase is over now. So here's all the leftovers. Here's the bits. That's the bookend of that part of our career. Now let's move on to the next bit, and the next bit is like an amazing bit.
The band did come back for International Super Hits. They recorded Maria and another song, and I believe that's when 9/11 occurred. It was a weird day in the studio. It was a weird month in the studio. They were very happy-go-lucky. And one day, just real hard thing to deal with for those guys, and for ourselves, of course.
Once again, the press were speculating that perhaps Green Day were winding down. After all, they had released not 1, but 2 compilations in quick succession, usually a sign that a record company is capitalizing on a band's popularity before it dwindles completely. However, the band and their fans knew differently. Having toured Warning, they took some time off to reflect on their future and what direction they could possibly take with their next record.
Somebody stop it! It's the Pop Disaster Tour, man!
I love being on stage.
You guys ready to sing along?
If I could, I would play for 2 more hours after, just because when I get into that moment, we just completely lose ourselves in it. I have to feed off of what they're doing, and then they feed off me and making sure that every single person is shaking their ass in that building.
In 2002, Green Day went out on the road again with Blink-182 for the Pop Disaster Tour. Whoever thought of that name must have been a clairvoyant. Green Day were burnt out, cheesed off about how warning it turned out, and generally fed up with each other. It probably wasn't helped that they were sharing stages with a younger band who had borrowed all their best ideas from Green Day themselves.
Everybody's a little nervous because the press and everybody, they try and set up some sort of like rivalry between Green Day and Blink.
It's just lame, but you know, that's what outsiders want to see. They want to see like some friction.
They're a band that really influenced our whole style of music and really opened doors for our whole genre of music and taught people about what punk rock really is.
They're just going out there and being Green Day, and they're being Blink, and everybody can kind of see for themselves.
Blink-182 were a very popular band. They were as big as Green Day, really, at that time. But they were as big as Green Day for doing more or less what Green Day had done, which was like these simple, bouncy, energetic songs with a kind of dumb toilet humour as part of it. So they did this tour, and I believe they finished the tour early because they realised that, you know, it could reflect badly on them, really, being closely associated with one of their own doppelgangers, if you like.
And the only reason Green Day took that tour was to destroy Blink-182. That was the only reason that they took that tour. And that they did. It was just quite remarkable just how on their game they were and how much of an effort they made. And I think that experience and that kind of exposure set the ground for American Idiot.
So Green Day had already been forced to face the music, and as things came to a head, it was time to face each other. In approaching their new album, Billie Joe suggested some sort of group counseling in which the band spoke openly of their feelings, both positive and negative for one another. And it worked.
As Billie Joe described, you know, he said to the other guys, do you really still want to do this? They don't have to do it. They've got enough money to last them the rest of their lives. And it wasn't a question of just coming up with new song ideas and different chord progressions. The problem is always in the relationships. And it was only when they sat down and Mike and Tre were brave enough to say, you stop being an arsehole and we'll start contributing stuff. I think the way he described it to me was, you may be the president, but you still need a cabinet. Billie Joe decided to swallow his pride a bit and not be so sensitive about the nasty things that they were saying to him. So that was the first thing, sort the relationships out. The second thing was a proper work ethic and a proper workspace. They set up this studio as basically their kind of playground.
They were here for 15 months when they were here last time, when they wrote American Idiot. It was not written before they came in here, and they just basically booked the studio just to experiment, to find out what they needed to do as artists. So they stayed, and they said, we're going to do it until we feel it. And apparently they felt it, you know, and so the band, it was just a perfect working machine.
Green Day recorded like crazy, 12 hours a day and 5 days a week, putting down fake Christmas songs and hip-hop tracks. They even recorded the entire Money Money 2020 album in the guise of a goofy punk band, The Network, a project they still won't own up to.
I asked them about The Network because there was this rumour that that Network album, Money Money 2020, was the lost Green Day album. And I'm sure Mike said, no, that's ridiculous. The other two just laughed, so draw your own conclusions.
The Network was done here, but never got to see what those guys look like.
They will insist that it's not them, when it very, very obviously is.
Halfway through recordings, however, disaster struck when the studio was burgled and a number of recordings from the album proper were stolen. Though some backup copies had been made, they took the opportunity to start their album again. Clearing the air made room for the band's most creative juices to flow, and to aid those juices, they kicked off the proceedings with lots and lots of fun and games.
Come to the studio, and there's spray paint Raiders crap all over the side of my building. And this isn't the first time. Usually it's something silly, but there was just Raiders crap all over. I'm like, great, ha, ha, ha. So I went in and I went into my surveillance system, and we found those three guys out there on the surveillance cam, just sitting there spraying and laughing and drinking or whatever, right? So I went into the lounge here, and we have this big TV in there, and I made a tape of a frame shot of all those guys with spray cans in their hands, and I freeze framed that, and I put little pieces of tape, and on the tape on the screen I wrote their names, you know, like Tre, and I point to this guy with the spray can, and, you know, Billy or what have you, and as soon as I finished doing that, I walked out of the studio, and Billie Joe just drove up in his car. And first thing he goes, "You know who it is. It was Tre. I didn't do it, John." And so I put my arm around him and said, "Billy, either I love you or you're going to die." And he kind of laughed. He goes, "What do you mean?" And I just walked with him into the studio like this. And I go, "There you are." And I said, "Motherfucker, motherfucker, motherfucker. You guys are dead." And he was like, "Oh shit, I'm busted." Right? So he opens up this door right behind me, and this whole room was just a mess. Toilet paper, everything, knives through drum sets and everything like that. You know, pictures of me saying this is war. I mean, you know, it was a flippin' mess, you know, but I got my revenge. The outside parking lot was a go-kart track. And these things weren't just like little pedal carts. I mean, they were serious. These things, I mean, 30, 35 miles an hour in a small parking lot, cone course, 10 carts. I mean, we had people going to the hospital. I was flipped, you know, we had the vice president of Warner Brothers A&R being flipped and almost ran over. I mean, there was no rules out there. In fact, this one point, I said, you know, when you're in the studio, when you're on tour, you're a rock star. When you're on the course, you're a victim. There's no holds barred. You know, they have a lot of fun around it, but if somebody has an idea, get off your fucking cart and get inside and let's do this. It doesn't matter who says that. If somebody says that, they all just run in. They know what's first. They have their priorities.
It just kind of came about of all of us having a good time in the studio. You know, I mean, sometimes you feel like if you're just trying to write songs, single songs, like it becomes like a labor or a labor of love. But this time it was just, you know, it was just inspired. We had a great time.
During one studio game where they had to come up with a 30-second song and link it to the last one, they realized they were writing material unlike any they had come up with before. For starts, the material was inspired by developments in American politics, most notably the rise of right-wing politics led by President George W. Bush, following the events of September 11, 2001.
American Idiot is about basically just feeling disenfranchised from the current of American pop culture and just get sort of bombarded with all this sort of information, but it's sort of useless information at the same time, and you just question where your individuality is, and it just kind of leaves you sort of confused.
I think a lot of artists in the United States right now are kind of afraid to voice their opinions, especially right after 9/11, in fear of not being patriotic. More people are stepping up right now, you know, and I think that's important. And I think it's the most patriotic thing you can do is to voice your opinion, even if it's just saying I'm confused and I'm scared. That's okay.
Well, maybe I'm the faggot America. I'm not a part of a redneck agenda. Now everybody to the propaganda. And sing along to the age of paranoia.
It's like, it's good to hear a band that's offering a rallying call, because it seemed like a lot of bands didn't say very much about the Bush thing. And for a band like Green Day to come out against it, you know what side they're on, but they've never been overtly political, really, massively. To make a record that was a political record, even though it wasn't like a sloganeering political record, it was just a record about being an American, about not being that happy with the situation, but not saying exactly. So it kind of captures all those kind of feelings.
You know, punk rock has a history of being political with bands like The Clash and the Sex Pistols and that sort of thing, and tweaking society in general, and anti-authoritarian and so on. So yeah, I think they're following in that proud tradition.
I think there's a genuine passion in Billie Joe at that stage to get his teeth into some lyrics, and I think he does a great job of doing that.
American Idiot, man, that was definitely just from the heart. You know, it was, you know, definitely what they were feeling at the time, and, you know, it was like they were making something that they were meant to do.
First single, American Idiot, absolutely fantastic. It's one of the top 10 greatest punk singles ever released. It's an amazing record, isn't it? Utterly powerful, lyrically spot on, really, really exciting performance. It's perfect, isn't it? There's nothing wrong with that record at all. There's not one thing you could redo in that record.
I think the experimentation on this record really comes from just taking away all the rules and practicing in the studio. It's about like playing with song structures and trying to make everything maximum Green Day.
I love using harsh words and harsh imagery to sort of get, you know, the feeling across, my point across, because I think deep down people are so censored that that's the actual words that they're thinking.
American Idiot is more of a concept than a kind of rock opera. It's operatic in the sense that there's a vague story told through various different movements and suites.
Although the characters do emerge from song to song, the story, such as it is quite hard to follow. This character starts out in the small town and is attracted to the big city. That's Billie Joe's story. Low self-esteem, led astray, subject to the temptations that all young people know about, and ends up in a bad way.
If you listen to American Idiot, they sing about this little small town, Jingle Town. It's a little 5-block radius area. When they mention the warehouse, that's this. When they mention Brad's and Mom's, Brad was my studio manager, you know, and he was mother hen. He'd walk in and say, "What the hell are you guys doing? You can't be writing on goddamn walls." You know, so they felt at peace and at home.
While American Idiot started off as the album that had conceivably been their least successful yet, it instead expanded their fan base as few could ever have predicted. A combination of dissatisfaction with American foreign policies, perfectly executed singles such as the album's title track and Boulevard of Broken Dreams that sounded made for radio, their most explosive live shows yet, and a new, sharper, trimmer look for the band all helped push American Idiot to the charts around the world. To date, it is approaching the 10 million mark.
Boulevard of Broken Dreams. I remember walking into the studio in the morning, and Mike just said, "You got to hear this song." And I think it was Mike and our chief engineer just pulled it up, and they said, "Yeah, we were just working on this last night. Listen to this," you know, and played it for me, and I couldn't get it out of my head. It was awesome.
I think Boulevard of Broken Dreams is it's actually, for me lately, it's felt like the hangover after the election. But it's definitely, I mean, it's got a more melancholy vibe, but it's, you know, I think it's a departure from anything we've ever done musically, but, you know, it's still very much Green Day.
And what next? In the footsteps of rock giants, they are about to embark on their first punk rock opera based on the themes of American Idiot. The true punk messiah himself, Billie Joe, is penning the drafts as we speak, and the band have solidified their reputation as one of the greatest live bands in the world.
American Idiot can probably sustain them for another good decade, and it's obvious by this point that Billie Joe Armstrong is a fantastic songwriter, and he's still a relevant voice in music.
Billie's always writing. I mean, you know, if he's playing outside and he gets an idea, he writes on your car. I mean, just so he doesn't forget it. There's always a pen. There's always something, you know. Billie doesn't stop. I'm sure he's writing right now.
I'm really glad that they've become so popular again, the resurgence from American Idiot, but I don't think that I think they would have just kept going on regardless, as long as they were happy making the music that they're making.
They're in for the long haul. As long as they want to be there, they'll be there, Green Day.
They've been around now for 10, 12, 14 years. So they can keep coming back. So any criticisms about whether they're true punk or not, well, maybe that is kind of true punk. You know, they're still doing what they want to do.